that little intro when we think we're gonna hear a song, and then we're just on.
No,
Welcome.
just a little acoustic guitar just to get us warmed up a little bit. Yeah, grab the hot cocoa or whatever,
I feel like I'm in North Georgia, sitting around the campfire with Nathan. He's got his little guitar going, and then Bluto from Animal House comes over. I'm just kidding. Anyway, welcome back to Calling All Beings. I'm your host DJ. It's great to be back here because this is a gentleman we've been chasing for months. So my co-host right here, co-creator, co-conspirator of the joint, Money Nathan is here, and the hair has obviously been combed.
Yeah, I need a haircut. I'm getting one tomorrow, but good to be here tonight. Very excited to speak with Dan. It's been a long time coming. Huge fan of this guy. I mean, who isn't a fan of Dan and everything that he's doing? Just looking for a great conversation. I know we're going to have one. Very excited to see folks in the audience. If you have questions, put them in all caps so we can see those, and we will get this started shortly. But we want to talk with Deb too and catch up with her. Deb, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I actually feel the heat from that fire right now.
Cozy, right?
Deb, take the scarf off. You're not going to need it indoors. But guess what, man? Guess what? Who's in the chat? Party people, put your hands together for Justin Owings.
Look at that. Yeah, how about that? There he is.
Yes. Also, and Scott Gearin, the pararescue legend, is in the building. But we got to introduce the new chat moderator of Calling All Beans, Nathan. Talk to me, baby.
Yes, Miss Julie Farrell.
Been around. She's an original gangster, people. So step back. Stay away from her car. Make sure you got a chamois if you're going to get close to it. But anyway, let's bring in our next guest who does know something about cars. And when he is ahead on the scoreboard, you can certainly count on him to go to the all corners defense. He is an engineer at a university. He is a Tennessean. I'm hoping that he's seen Sasquatch, but I'm not 100% sure. Party people, put those hands together for my man, Dan Warren.
What's up, guys? Happy to be here tonight.
Good to have you with us.
We've been waiting for you, Dan.
Hey, I want to give a quick shout out to Jules of the Woods. She is one of the first people on Twitter that was nice to me, so I'll never forget her because of that. She is a positive source of feedback for everybody. She is a very pleasant person to be in the presence of.
She's amazing.
She is. I got to meet her at the Floribama meetup, and she is just an absolute delight to be with, hang out with, hear narratives, and also she's she's a remote viewer. She's an experiencer and someone who's been doing this a long time and is not just dropping in the joint, but she knows what's going down. Also, if any of you out there are into all natural shoes, please check out birthdayshoes.com. Justin Owings, who is in the chat. I've been reading his blog since 2009 or so and have bought several pairs of shoes, like probably 10, based on his recommendations of different types. Anyway, welcome, man. It's Dan Warren, and let me pass the microphone over. Let me pass it over to Money Nathan.
Man, Dan. All right, so let's just get right into it. What's going on? What you doing? I know the TikToks are flying. I don't miss those. I love them so much. But I mean, what's happening in your world right now? What are you focused on? What do you see trending? What are you getting big response to when you're out there in the TikTok world?
So stupid videos are what get the best response on TikTok, of course. Anything I do that is I made some videos of me throwing an extension cord because I can wrap it up like a microphone and toss it 100 feet and it'll unravel. And that one got rave reviews. So it's always a shock because the ones that I put all my heart and soul into, those are the ones that do good on Twitter, but they're not the ones that do good on TikTok. So it's two different demographics. Wow. But as far as things that are going on right now, to me, the biggest event that we've had, the one I made a video about, is going to be the Kirsten Gillibrand comments that she had after her town hall meeting in Manhattan. I felt like that was a pretty big moment in ufology where a sitting senator made the types of statements that she made. And she's got her finger on it. She is not letting it go. She's going to be a pit bull. And you saw how she responded to the gentleman that she was vetting a couple months ago, and he said he didn't really know a lot about US UAPs. So she was like, you're about to, and you're not going to get this unless you give me a report on it. So I think that's one of the biggest things that's happened in the last week or two, which, let's be honest, it feels at this point in ufology like we're drinking from a fire hose as far as news and updates and articles go, compared to just 2 years ago when it was 1 a month, 2 a month, and it's just ramped up exponentially in the recent past.
Yeah, I think that's hard for folks to. I mean, we're kind of in it day in and day out, and we maybe kind of forget that. So it's great to hear you say that. And on the Gillibrand thing in particular, what struck me was just there was no pushback. There was no. This is not something I can talk to you about right now. It was total kind of. I'm into this. Let's have this conversation. This is an okay thing to discuss. I mean, imagine a senator taking that approach to this topic just a few years ago. I don't think we would have seen that happen. I think it would have been that, sort of kind of nodding and, if you can just kind of move along and I'm going to get to the next constituent situation there.
Completely vague responses and non-committal exchanges is what I would have expected just a few years ago. One thing that I am always on the lookout for is patterns, and something that I noticed, because I can't remember who posted it as a comment to my tweet where I posted my video about the Gillibrand video, was that Representative Mike Gallagher said, "I'm not going to let it go." He also said it. So to me, I'm waiting for that third person, which, I mean, I haven't listened to all the interviews or all the comments that the congressmen and women have made, but to me, it almost sounds like they've kind of huddled together in the background and said, we're not going to let it go. If you don't let it go, I'm not going to let it go. So they're starting to use similar vocabulary. It could just be a coincidence. I'm not going to say that I have any information that leads me to believe it's a coordinated effort behind the scenes, but it seems like they have all kind of reassured each other that they're going to move forward with this, whatever this is, right, and not let go and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's just an exciting time to be in a subject like this because of that. It's unprecedented, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, well, they're not sniping at each other on it, so they could easily use that as a political, jab. Oh, my rival across the aisle, they're into UFOs. You'd never hear that from any of these folks. You hear the most you'll hear is that I'm worried we're spending money and our attention in the wrong place, but no one is really saying that this isn't something we should care about or we should give any of our attention to. So yeah, it's very exciting. And we had, Jim Semivan on recently, and the way he kind
of never heard of him.
Yeah,
before.
just some guy you may have heard of, some sort of officer, retired officer with some agency. But he reminded us that they've seen a lot of the classified material and that they're really mad about it. They're mad that they've been basically lied to, and that's certainly what I've been hearing from folks that I talk with behind the scenes. And I think you're right, Dan. They are laser focused on this. They want some answers. Obviously, we have a lot of things going on in the world and in politics generally right now. So there's a lot of different topics that are vying for attention, but this doesn't seem to be fading away, going into the background.
Exactly. And I think we're also at the point where we can stop saying that the UFO topic is a distraction. I feel like it is a legitimate issue. It's a national security issue. It is a safety of flight issue. It is a facilities issue. It is a safe. What are? Yeah. Without saying it, let's say it. So it is a concern, and it is a legit concern. So people congressmen and women are starting to recognize that, and they're realizing that we might be behind the ball, and that they've had the wool pulled over their eyes. That's one of my favorite Ross Coulthart comments, is when he talks about the media being asleep at the wheel, having the wool pulled over their eyes. Congress is the same way. They're just as guilty. They Dennis Kucinich, who lost his presidential run, ended because he saw a UFO. What a different world we live in now. Yeah. From Ohio, he was in a debate, and they said, hey, it was stated in a book, and I can't remember the name of the book or the author at the moment, that you saw a UFO. And he said, yeah, I did. And I couldn't explain it, this, that, and the other. And that pretty much tanked his election campaign. And now we have people that are just recently, 2020, Kirsten Gillibrand ran for president. I think Marco Rubio did too, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And
Yes.
and they, well, he couldn't have because Trump was still in. So I think it would have been 2016 when Marco Rubio did.
He ran
He
in
did.
2016.
He
Yeah.
ran in
did?
16.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so those are current people that have their eyes on the prize, and they're openly talking about this subject across the aisle. Nothing else is like that at this moment. Everything else is bickering. This is one of the only things that they come together on and agree that needs to be it's something that needs to be addressed. It's amazing.
It's the only thing. For those of you out there who are wondering if my head is this fat in person, Nathan and Dan can both confirm that it is. But that's why we bring on. Hey, what's up? So Dave Smethers is in the chat. I want to say hello to Dave Smethers from England. You should be in bed, sir. Mm-hmm. And Tupacabra, our former guest, is here as well. Laura Sosa. So man, we've got a lot of cool people. Not to mention Justin Owings from Birthday Shoes. Man, what's up? But we did bring on somebody that doesn't have a fat head, and that's Deb. So go right ahead.
But before we get to Deb, I gotta say something to Tupac. Tupac, I'm gonna call him Tupac.
Yeah.
Hey, is rolling with the homies a reference to Clueless? Because I watched that with my kid just 2-3 weeks ago, and man, that's been going around our house like on repeat recently.
I love that movie.
Can I get an amen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, I had a related question about I know that you deep dive on what's going on with the politicians, current events, and I was struck by the implication that legacy programs are still being hidden away. And I feel like you would know about at least 6 of them, right? So I feel like
7.
yeah, at least, right? So I'm like, are you honing in on that? Are you gonna kind of jump on that point when you make this video? Because that really struck me. I was like shocked, and I noticed, of course, that now they are going back to 1947. That's one of the things they're trying to do. And okay, so what are you gonna do with that information?
So my answer to that is I'm kind of doing that. There's 2 different videos. I'm doing a deep dive on one in particular, but the other one that I feel like I'm going to try to compile some information about is the Calvine photo and the significance of it. If you guys haven't listened to the UAP Society podcast with Vinny, Chris Lato, and I'm sorry, I can't remember I think it's Carl Crusher, and I've forgotten the fourth person, but Ross Coulthart was on there, and he was talking to Vinny about the significance of that photo, and that he has been led to believe that is a reverse engineered craft that was being flown out of RAF. And so that combined with the fact that, hey, that happened right after the Bob, I hate even bringing up Bob Lazar, but right after Bob Lazar happened, they got a lot of attention at S4. All of a sudden, we get a picture of the Calvine UFO flying out of RAF, which is coming to be thought of as a reverse engineered American UFO, UAV. I'm trying to connect dots all the time. So those are some dots that I'm seeing that I want to investigate a little bit further. So that's been something to me that has kind of stood out. Highly recommend that podcast. That interview is great.
What's up, Vinny? Man, we got to talk, man, disclosure team all day, man. Vinny is definitely a member of Cab Fam, and he has a great show. In fact, he had Dr. Diana Pasulka on as well, and I haven't heard that episode yet. I just messaged him that a while ago. But, yeah, I will listen to that. I've had some conversations with Frank Milburn. I've had conversation with Richard Butt on this one, who a lot of people know is read into a lot of things, and kind of ran some. And also Condor Man. Condor Man did show a patent for a diamond-shaped dirigible technology. As I've mentioned to you guys before, I think there are a lot of technologies that they will apply for a patent on that aren't actualized, but they're thrown out there as chaff for intelligence services and so on, like the anti-gravity stuff. Obviously we're not seeing, we're not flying around in our own anti-gravity craft, but it would behoove me to put that out there so that the other services have to wonder, oh, there's a Navy patent on it. do they have something? Probably not, but they need to look into it. So with regard to that, I've been to RAF Machrihanish. We actually had our RI there in 2007 when I was stationed in England. So we rented the base from the RAF for that. It's not a secure base, and I cannot imagine why, if I was flight testing a secret technology, why I would fly it from somewhere like Nevada to Scotland and then fly it in day VMC, which would be day visual meteorological conditions, which means everybody can see it. So I can't figure out why you would do that. I also would wonder with a craft that's that big, if it doesn't have, if it's not dirigible in nature and it doesn't have some omnidirectional propulsion up, down, left, right, then how do I make a landing in this craft? How do I steer this craft? I'm going to need ailerons. I'm going to need wings that are proportional to the size of the craft, and then horizontal and vertical stabilizers, etc. Unless it's dirigible. If it's dirigible, now I can shrink all the control surfaces because it's already aloft. But I don't think it's that. But
so I'll challenge you to tell me what makes sense in the UFO community. Like nothing makes sense. There's so many things that are just contradicting each other. It's so confusing.
Well, to me, you have to show me how it flies. If somebody can tell me how it flies, then I can go. So when I see something, like for example, I saw the that photo where it's the USS something, and there's something that has 4 lights on it, and it looks like a drone. And to me, there's nothing that I see there that I could say that's not a drone.
But you also can't tell how it's propelled. Like it's just not enough information. That's a lot of what we have to work with is insufficient data.
Well, yeah, there are ifs that are involved when the witnesses say, okay, it hovered silently for 10 minutes and then shot straight up in the air silently. Now I'm saying it's not man-made technology because we can't do that now. So I don't think you could do it then. And if you could do it now, we'd be flying that now. And instead, I know the planes that we're buying, and they're just not in the realm of something. In fact, I got to show you guys one of the newest aircraft we're buying. When you see it, just know that it's called the Air Tractor, and that should tell you something. Specifically you, Dan. Anyway, let me go with my question that I had for you, Dan, because it's from Christopher Sharp, one of your fans.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Chris, too.
Yeah, he called me today to get this question in for you. As I was leaving work, and just
I'm flattered. I'm so flattered by that. That's cool.
Yeah, he loves you, Dan. We all love you. He says he wants to know about how you were able to craft this relationship with Tim Burchett, who he sees as certainly an advocate for us and somebody that we're really lucky to have, and also why you do what's a 2-part question. First about Tim, and then the second half it'd be about how you came up with this idea for TikTok because he loves it.
So the way that I got a hold of Tim is, and by the way, I think his name is pronounced Burchett because I have a guy that I work with whose last name is Burchett. So I'm going with Burchett. Burchett sounds too French, too European. I don't think he would say it that way. Agreed. Whenever I get a hold of him, I'm asking for clarification. That's the first question I'm asking is, how do you pronounce your last name? But the way that I ended up getting a hold of him is because he actually had 2 interviews where he openly spoke about the UFO topic. And I made 2 TikToks about it, basically saying like, he is saying exactly what we're saying. Like, this is the frustration that we as a community have. And we have a congressman that is saying exactly what we think. So it was great to hear it. And I ended up taking screenshots of those 2 videos, printing them out on a piece of paper, and then writing, "Dear Representative Burchett, I appreciate you making these statements that you have. I've made these videos. If you want to check them out, go check them out here on TikTok, or I've got them on YouTube now. And I would like to talk to you about this more at some point and just see what your thoughts are." So at that point, I didn't expect anything to happen. I sent it to the Washington, the Knoxville, and there were 3 office addresses that he had posted. I just printed them out, hand wrote them, sent him pictures of me in front of my restored Bronco with my kids and my wife, posing for Father's Day, and like, I'm just a normal guy, just interested in this topic. I just wanted to talk to you about it. So he ended up actually calling me on like a Friday night as I was grilling some food for dinner, and we had our first conversation over the phone. And the same thing that he said to me in that phone call is the same thing he has been repeating ad nauseum on these interviews and on these news segments. So he has been consistent with his stance that we have been lied to. So it's refreshing to see. I feel like I got an insight into his mentality, into his thought process pretty much before the rest of the UFO community. And it's nice to see that it has been consistent. I don't always agree with him on politics. I'll throw that out there right now. But I am grateful to have him as an advocate for UAP disclosure, because he has been consistent. And I do feel like he is going to continue to push. And I feel like in any day now, he's going to say, I'm not going to let it go. So I'm hoping that'll end up coming out of his mouth soon.
And so, Dan, Graham Rendell posted his letter to his MP the other day. I'm trying to remember someone else that said that they wrote to their MP recently, and we're talking about our British brothers and sisters writing to their members of Parliament that are, I guess, House of Commons types. So you're inspiring people by doing stuff like that, and obviously Christopher was as well. So thank you. Not what you're doing is not just localized, but other people are like, okay, I need to engage with my politician on this topic, even though in their case they know that right now the answer they're going to get is going to be a sort of a pat canned answer, which Graham spoke about. And let me pass over to the money man.
But I would recommend that you put your personal self in the letter. Don't just write something out. If you feel comfortable putting a picture of yourself or your family in there, someone's going to open 1,000 letters that day. They're going to look at that one with the picture longer than they're going to look at any other one. So I hate to say use your family as leverage. It's not what I'm saying.
But please use your family as leverage. Every community,
like, show them you're a human. You're a regular person. You're just a regular dude. Let them know that. I feel like that's something that could be beneficial to contacting our representatives. Is we're not just a bunch of words and angry letters. I'm sure they get tons of those. Yeah. We're a community. We're people. We're just like them.
Yeah. Spot on. Well, and this reminds me, or I think of the article that we saw from Billy Cox the other day, where he was talking about kind of the body language analysis of a lot of the folks that have come forward and mentioned something about this topic. So, including the presidents, he mentioned Woolsey and Brennan in particular. I've always been fascinated by his response to the questions that he received, where he kind of goes into this. He has this very kind of troubled, heavy, weighed down sort of body language. And
can you do it, Nathan? Can you?
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like, and it may constitute some kind of form of life, So it seems clear that there is this. Where I'm going with this, Dan, is that there's this human element here, right? And I think what you're saying is, bring that to the forefront of the engagement, because really this issue really does connect us on this fundamental human level. And those that are kind of closer to the secrets, it's not that they don't feel that too, that they feel that very profoundly. And so by engaging them in this human way, it's a way to really create that connection, a sense that they will be more likely to respond, and they'll think of that picture, they'll think of that anecdote that you share with them when they're kind of fighting for this cause in the halls of Congress. But what I wanted to ask you about, just as a discussion topic, I haven't listened to the entire interview with Dr. Pasulka and Vinny, but the part that I did catch was something that I had not heard before. And she mentioned that she has absolutely heard from people who are in some of these deep black programs, including, she said, an individual who had been in the program since they were 18, and they are now about 60 years old. So
how do you get that job at 18?
Right. So I was trying to do the math on that, right? That's like early 80s, 40 years ago. Must have been like a super bright person that just, I don't know, that got picked up into the program. But I mean, how far back do you think this goes? Where's the biggest amount of smoke in your mind in terms of the legacy programs that might be out there?
I'm going to say the most obvious thing that's ever been said on the show. I think it dates back to 1947. I mean, everybody's been talking about. It's been shocking to me how many people have been talking about Roswell lately. Like, I thought that was too far gone to be of any value, to be of any benefit to this community, but it has reared its head again. It is shocking to me that that's where Lou Elizondo has pointed. That's where Donald Trump has pointed. There's been so many people commenting on that recently that it is making me look back at it and view it in a different light. I don't know how else to say it, but it's something happened in 1947. All signs are pointing to it. And it wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't dummies.
That's so funny. It just even saying it.
So the best thing that you can hear as far as 1947 goes are the radio clips that they play. I can't tell you exactly what YouTube channel put this together as a compilation, but they play the news segments from the day they found it, the day that night, and then the next day the tone changes, and then it changes some more, and it's just this weird trajectory that this story takes from ramping up to all of a sudden being squashed completely flat. It's really strange. It's really telling, in my opinion.
I think Nathan and Deb, and I think you and I've probably had this conversation during our very early phone conversations. I never didn't believe, just by the nature of how it went down, I never didn't believe it for a second because I knew it was crap. Just because I know how they work and I know how they, that they would try to do that. So I just I never believed that. And also, who would make a big deal if it was a crash weather balloon? Why the hell are we having all these deuce and a halves and tractor trailers rolling out to Corona, New Mexico, which is like 90 miles from Roswell, to pick up a weather balloon? And, so, I mean, it's just absurd on its face. But anyway, I digress. One thing I did want to say, though, is what you said, though, is about that they feel like Tim feels like he's one of us, and Kirsten does as well, and that it's bipolitical, if you will. Even if you look at the people on this panel, Nathan is from a completely different background than myself, as are you, and Deb also is from a completely different background than the three of us. And I'd like to say to people that these folks, like whether you're talking about a Richard Butt or a Lou Elizondo or a Dan Warren, Lou Elizondo is you, as it relates to ufology. Dan Warren is you. Nathan is you. Exo is you. I'm you. There's not. We're all after the same thing. Deb is you. There's not there's this group and then there's that group and this group's trying to do. No, we're all trying to figure out what's going on here together.
A rising tide lifts all boats. Like, we're all trying to get answers. We're all trying to figure this out, and we're taking different paths to try to get to the same endpoint. And we all have our different journeys in life, and we're all taking different journeys in the UFO analysis. Like, we're trying to figure this out.
There's no us and them is the point, though. Lou is one of us. He wants to know too.
Except for Stephen Greenstreet. Shout out to Stephen Greenstreet.
I think he wants to know.
It's drones. I love you, Stephen.
I think he wants to be convinced. That's what it is.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't fault the guy. Like, he's asking hard questions that are not getting answered. I can't fault the guy for asking.
Are we gonna have
to
let
need
Nathan
people like
go?
him in this society?
Nathan has a hypothesis on this. Nathan, you ready before?
No, I'm not going to go there.
Okay, don't do. Okay, all right, go ahead, Deb.
Okay, so and it was a combination of like my own research because we really do go on a journey, and listening to Dr. Pasolka on Vinny's show, I was thinking about how often religions and cultures have parallel things going on. Do you think that there's a possibility that the inheritance model of an ancient civilization is true? It also is reflected in our religion, and then that might explain the possibility of ultra terrestrials, as mentioned by Hal Puthoff?
I think it very well could be. If you look at the megalithic record, which is just the large stone construction that's occurred in humanity's past, the largest stones, the most elaborate work is the earliest. It sits on the bottom. Other civilizations basically found those sites, inherited those sites, built upon them. The question I have is, why did those original builders pick that location? What was the significance of that location, or if it had some significance? Why would you build on the top of Machu Picchu with these giant stones? And that is, in my opinion, if you guys don't know, go look up a Brian Forrester video on YouTube about Machu Picchu, and you're going to be blown away. You're going to find out that there's 3 different levels of techniques, building techniques that took place in that same location. And the oldest stuff is the most amazing. It blows my mind. So there's something, we were handed this information, or those sites. We built upon them for obvious reasons. They were picked because there was value in that location for resources or whatever it was. And the same could be true, in my opinion, for religion. Like, maybe we didn't understand why people worship the way that they did. We heard about it, we interpreted it the way that we could, and I don't want to even say anything about this because Nathan's on the panel and he's gonna tell me where I'm wrong.
That's fine.
But the religion, in my opinion, that jumps out to me as what's up with those guys is the Indian religion, the gods that they had. It's just phenomenal. Their history, their religious history is aliens, and there's no other way to talk about it. Extraterrestrials that came to Earth and they had blue skin and 4 arms, or however many arms. Why was that so significant? Why is it that Chris Bledsoe was visited by the lady and she told him that her name was Hathor, who is a Egyptian god? So why did Lou Elizondo make the cigarette analogy where he said some beings experience time differently than we do? Maybe there are some beings that have a longer existence than we do, that we don't understand. So it could be that Hathor that Chris Bledsoe met is the same Hathor from Egypt that they depicted on the walls of her temple. So to me, there could be some hand-me-down religious context associated with it that I want to know about. That's where I think what does it mean to be a human really comes into play. Like, why are we classifying ourselves as human? What are these other things? These things that may, as was it Woosley or Brennan that said, these things may represent something we may recognize as something that's similar to life. Like, what a vague, non-committal statement to make.
Right.
Which is something else that I've picked up on as a pattern. So he basically got on that show and said, there's something up there. We don't really know exactly what it is. Lou Elizondo recommended that we read the book Chains of the Sea. What's that book about? It's about multiple different possible origins of the UAP phenomena, including extraterrestrials, something that is terrestrial in nature and has always been here and is more akin to the jinn than humanity, but we just can't perceive it. Hal Puthoff goes on and talks about ultra-terrestrials, which could be a variety of different origins, including the ancient race of humanity that there's only remnants left of, which leads to the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis. So it's all intertwined. And this is where I just feel like we don't know. And if you listen to the guys that were talking about this back in the 60s, they sound like they could be on this podcast today. They'd say the exact same thing today that they did back in the 60s. I don't think that we as species has the ability to understand what we're dealing with yet. I'm hoping that we get there at some point, but I don't think we understand what it is. Jacques Vallée said ETs are too simple of an answer. I'm going to have to go with him on this one for the moment.
Yeah.
One thing I'm going to say, I want to say 2 things. First of all, Nathan, can you please send Dan a check just for that last segment alone?
Absolutely.
Send him a check.
Mm-hmm. On the way.
All right. And Dan, the only part I think our capacity for understanding is great. But if I were to ask you to just know as somebody out of the womb, so to speak, how to do advanced mathematics without someone to stand at the blackboard and say, Dan, this is how it goes. You see, I'm going to write out this equation, and then maybe you could pick it up. I feel like if we had contact where their aim or their goal was to have us to understand, I believe, and this is maybe complete naivete on my part. So let me just say that. I believe we would have the capacity to understand if they wanted to explain the nature of their origin to us.
So I'm going to go with what I feel like you're describing is if they gifted us a craft, that wouldn't explain it to us like they wouldn't be sitting in front of a chalkboard teaching us their technology, but they would say, hey, look, this is a craft. It can do amazing things. Don't give up. Keep trying. Learn for yourself. And that's how I view the UFO topic as far as educating people about it. I'm not going to sit there and try to convince you that UFOs are real. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, here's some information that I found compelling. Look into it yourself, think for yourself, and make up your own mind as to if you think this is something that's worthwhile digging into deeper. And if it is, man, there's so much more for you to find. Your learning journey has just begun. So that's my goal with my TikTok channel, is to get people to hook them with that curiosity bug, that what if question that has been bouncing around in my head like a ping pong ball in a glass jar for 43 years.
Wow. Well, you answered Christopher Sharp's second question, so thank you.
I don't remember what it was.
No, that was it. He wanted to kind of know. So what you just said about I go to TikTok. I'm not going to tell you need to believe this, which is in my view, it's the right stance. I don't have to make you believe anything or convince you of anything. This is what I found out. If you want to take this information in, great. If you don't, have a great day. Nathan, I think you're next.
Yeah, well, I mean, just on the megalithic thing and kind of the overall human story, right? I feel as if what we're learning is how much we don't know, and this topic is very good at, I think, exposing how much we don't know. And if you think about our kind of Western conception of history and ancient history, archaeology, all of these kind of subjects that you and I, we were born into just thinking like, oh, we kind of figured this stuff out, and we have these disciplines, and it all makes sense, and they're very thoughtful and well orchestrated or whatever, and they have these systems, and they're explaining our history, and it's all very neat and tidy. And the truth of the matter is, like, we're really just in our infancy, and we've thrown a narrative at the wall here that has done a decent job explaining our past. But the more that we dig, the more that we look around, the more we kind of have to go, wait a minute, I don't know if that narrative quite fits the facts. And I think the megalithic structures, to me, really highlight that in kind of in stark detail. How do you have all of these incredible structures around the world and just sort of say, well, I mean, the ancient people, they were just, they really liked building this stuff, and they just put a lot of people to it, and they all kind of figured out these techniques, and we don't know how to do it, but I mean, they were all just doing it at the same time, even though, by the way, they didn't actually have any connection with each other. None of that really makes any sense. Yeah, exactly.
In incredibly hard stone. There's tool marks on the granite that can't be explained by pounding one rock with another. Like, there's just things that, it's the anomalies that we're finding that make us question the narrative, the historical narrative of humanity. Just like it is the anomalies that we're finding in our skies right now that are making us question our reality.
Yeah, for sure. And so what do you think, if you were to kind of peer into the crystal ball a little bit into the next 100 years, obviously we can kind of speculate a lot here, but what do you think that this means for the stories that we take for granted today? I mean, how much reworking are we going to see happen as this continues to unfold and run its course?
So there's what I think, and then there's what I hope for.
Let's hear it.
I heard it's going to go, I'm going to go dark first. So, and then I'll brighten it up. But the statement that I heard that has stuck with me, like, if you want to envision the future, just envision a boot on a skull. And that's the future of humanity. And unfortunately, I have to believe that based on past being an indicator of the future.
I've seen that movie too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my hope is that what we find out is that, just like Graham Hancock has said many, many times, that we are a species with amnesia, that our historical record has been wiped off the face of the earth. Think of Noah's flood. It's in multiple different religions and documents around the world. If you look into the work of Randall Carlson, who I actually met a few weeks ago, and I'll tell you right now, I was shaking like a leaf, nervous, because like he is one of those guys to me that is, my wife has no idea who he is, but I'm just like I'm fanning out. I was so nervous to meet him. But awesome. He has found all the evidence in the geographical record in the Channel Scablands of Washington of an enormous flood, not a gradual deterioration of the strata that we see on the surface of the earth, but a sudden catastrophic event. So what I think is going to happen in the next 100 years is that we're going to confirm that we as a species have been subjected to numerous catastrophic events that have reset us and demolished our current civilizations, but we retained the core story through verbal communications, through finding these locations that have these structures that we aren't able to make ourselves. So we decided to build on them. We decided to try to replicate them. We try to add hieroglyphs to them to make them ours, to add our little piece to this slice of history. That's what I'm hoping for in the next 100 years, is that we recognize that as a society that, hey, existence is fleeting on Earth. An asteroid could come and wreck our civilization. One thing that I've heard people talk about with the time traveler hypothesis is they'll say, well, why would a highly advanced human want to come back and find out our history when they know it already? And to me, I refer to the fact that a technological society is going to be the easiest one to erase. Like there's all these podcast tweets that we make, they're going to vanish with a power outage, with a EMP. We're not going to exist. Those records aren't going to exist. They could be easily wiped from the record. 1,000 years from now, of course, they're going to be gone if something had happened. Stone's going to last longer. That's going to be part of the record that we're going to see. I think landfills are going to be our contribution to the future,
to history.
Yeah. That's where they're gonna root through our landfills and try to figure us out based on our trash.
Yep.
Well, they're going to find out how much my hip surgery cost in that case. But anyway, no, this is fascinating. And by the way, it made me think that when we have Dr. Michael Masters on, we should have Dan back on, because I have a feeling that you guys would have a great dialogue. And Debs, I think it's your turn, my friend.
Yeah, I actually think it's so weird that you were talking about that, because I was watching the National Geographic special about moving the ocean aside to see what's underneath and the ancient civilizations that are actually being found in the ocean. So I was looking for Atlantis, of course, but I think it's fictitious. But I wanted to ask if you had heard about the mini hominids, because I know you're interested a little bit in cryptids.
Flora florensis, is that them?
Yeah, there's two now. There's one that was off of the island. Hold on, I wrote this in Indonesia, and one in the Philippines. Yes,
that's the one I'm familiar with.
And the one in the Philippines, and they just happen to be the same size as what we talk about when we talk about the grays. Don't you think that's peculiar? They're about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, and I just think that that's something people should be investigating. There's lots of stories in our folklore about fairies and little people and, sprites and things like that. So what is your input on the hominids that are
Debs, I just want to say that James Iandoli referred to both Nathan and I as that species. So this is a bit of a sensitive topic right now.
Oh, I'm very sorry. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you're not 3.5 feet tall, though.
Okay.
So it's almost like those species of humanity would have a vested interest in avoiding contact with us and relying on stealth to survive. So if you, which is, I'm alluding to the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis. So it could very well be that in our ancient past, at some point, there have been hominids that relied on stealth, relied on staying out of our way, more or less, to survive. And that could be because they're smaller than us or something that would require them to do it. One of the things that blows my mind is looking at the elongated skulls of Paracas. Those things looked pathetically weak. Like if you look at them, and you're like, man, those things couldn't put up with me in a fight. Their brains were 25% larger than us. Their eye sockets were 50% larger than us. Maybe they lived in a different environment than we did. So maybe that's how they survived. I'm of the opinion that what happened was they came from the Black Seas. They made it to Peru, made it to Paracas. They decided to try to live amongst the people there. And just like the Neanderthal, like 2, 3 of the 4 of us, I'm not sure about you, Deb, have Neanderthal DNA in our genes.
I have a lot, apparently.
The Asian population has a certain percent of Denisovan in their DNA. So they're close. I think that what happened to the elongated skulls of Paracas is they were close enough to us genetically to where they were able to breed with the population there. And they just kind of became part of the population. So they had something genetically different from us that was bred out of their lineage at some point. And it was, but where did they come from? Why did everything that's so different about those skulls exist in the first place? Were they underground dwellers is what I lean to. And is that why we wouldn't have ever found them if they hadn't come out of hiding and tried to live amongst the people of Paracas?
It's worth noting that with the hominids that they were on islands, and with almost all the ancient civilizations that have gone underwater, they were right next to the water like an island. So, it kind of makes you wonder, everything's coming out of the water now. Is there something we missed? I'm just very curious about that. I wish we knew all the answers.
And something to point out is during the Younger Dryas event where there was rapid heating, the sea levels rose 400 feet in, I want to say 1,000 years. I'm giving myself a little buffer there. I'm not exactly sure how long.
I'm writing this down, right?
400 Nathan, feet.
Got it.
Okay.
That gets you basically to the continental shelf of all of the continents around the world. Like Indonesia, those areas were, there was so much land that was exposed. And of course, where are our civilizations going to build themselves when we first started to civilize would be along the shoreline. So we've lost an enormous amount of our history that I want to get back someday. And so that's one of the things that I hope for the UFO phenomenon is they'll be like, oh yeah, we know that. Here's some videos of what happened 12,500 years ago.
Dan, if only you read a little bit more.
Dude, I'm telling you, I don't read.
On more topics, so if you could kind of...
I absorb via podcast, YouTube, and well, I have read some of Graham Hancock's.
I just feel like you just motivated me to talk to aliens more. I want to talk to them about our history now.
Yes, Debs, you should be. I can't believe you haven't been doing this.
I can't believe you're still calling them the A word. That's not PC anymore, man.
Hey, I have a Mac. But anyway, Dan, like I just now since I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions that I've generated just since you've begun talking that are great questions. So we might extend this one out a little bit. And also, I want to encourage you. I literally forgot that we're in the Fireside Chat format, which means you can pose a question to someone else or a topic for the group, because that's really what we're supposed to be doing here. But we've been so fascinated to ask you questions that we forgot all about it. Right, Nate?
Yeah, we just have a good time.
Debs?
Yeah,
we totally forgot it. So after this, I'm going to ask you about our friend who is very ever omnipresent in the woods up there in Tennessee. But I shouldn't say friend because now after, okay. What happened is Nathan turned me on to Sasquatch Chronicles. Dan sent me an episode today about.
I sent him the best episode ever.
God, I don't know if it's the best ever. that I've heard on his show, because he has so many amazing episodes. To hikers in Kentucky, he's got so many great episodes, but it was great, and I did listen to the whole thing. So let's talk about Bigfoot, and after this, Dan, you can either throw out a topic for the group to consider or ask someone in the group a question if you so choose. Okay. I was so gratified to hear that you have an interest in the topic, since Nathan's fully responsible for me not sleeping for 5 out of the last 10 nights. What is your thought on can we just start with completely terrestrial creature, or possibly terrestrial and interdimensional, or one or the other, and then you can just take it wherever you want to go with it, please?
All right. As far my gut tells me it's a terrestrial hominid, just natural creature. I don't see why. When I look at humanity, I see a lot of variety. I see a huge amount of variety, just like I see when I look at the canine species. I mean, it just runs the gamut of sizes and shapes and colors. And so why wouldn't there be a Great Dane version of humanity that wouldn't be exactly like us? They could be a derivative, a branch off of our tree. The Denisovans were larger than us. The Neanderthals were shorter but stouter than us. So why wouldn't there be a megafauna version of us that was smart enough to have survived the last glacial retreat, where the woolly mammoths didn't make it, the mastodons didn't make it, the giant sloths didn't make it? What if there was a giant human? There's all kinds of records of large hominid type people. The work of Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira is phenomenal, where they've gone back in the newspapers where they have reports of finding large bones. The oral tradition of the Native Americans, where they say there were people that were well proportioned, that were enormous. That, like, there's got to be something to it, in my opinion, if it has been so well documented. And I'll say in our oral traditions, in our histories. If you look at Gilgamesh in Samaria, he was holding two lions in his arms. Egypt has depictions of giant human beings next to regular sized people that look like dwarfs. So to me, there's something there. What it is, I don't know, but I want to believe that Bigfoot's there. Because of Micah Hanks, I feel like I can talk about Bigfoot and UFOs in the same podcast.
Micah Hanks, what's up?
And but then there's those anomalies that show up when you start looking into the Bigfoot topic. They're accompanied by lights in the forest that are unexplainable, that sound like orbs. There's nothing else I can describe them as, but they sound like orbs that they have a relationship with. I don't know if they have control of them, if they have a symbiotic relationship, but they're seen in similar scenarios at similar times. I've heard some crazy ones on Sasquatch Chronicles where a person ran into one with their car, and as the Bigfoot slapped the hood, there was a flash of light, and all of a sudden it was gone. So there's all these anomalies that show up in it. But just like the UFO topic and the stigma associated with it that keeps people from telling the truth, telling their actual experiences because they're afraid of being judged, same thing happens in the Bigfoot world. People don't want to talk about the woo side of their experiences, their encounters, that they don't want to be looked down upon because they had this strange thing happen. And then you can also take a look at the work of Stan Gordon out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who was an amazing UFO researcher. And then he started to notice patterns, which is like I said, one of the things that I am looking for all the time is patterns. He found a pattern where there were UFO sightings and then there were Bigfoot sightings. And if you want to say this guy's not a good researcher, you've never looked into his research. He was very thorough, very complete with what he did. So for somebody of that caliber to look at this Bigfoot phenomenon and say there is a link between the Bigfoot phenomena and the UFO phenomena, I got to give it some credence. I have to look at it. I have to not judge it, make my mind up, and then look at it. I have to come into it with an open mind and say, let me see what he's got. Let me see how he's linking these two things together. There's just so much odd stuff associated with Bigfoot. For instance, we can't find any skeletal remains of him. Like how, why? That seems so odd that we wouldn't be able to at this point. I don't know if that answered a question, but that was just me rambling about Bigfoot, UFOs, and orbs for a while.
I love it.
No, I was going to say that I think you did. I mean, you said that it's something that you have to consider because of the evidence. And I don't know if Nathan heard the same episode of Sasquatch Chronicles. And by the way, shout out to Wes Germer. He and a combination of his brother, and his colleagues have almost 900 episodes, which is remarkable in this space.
Yeah.
Yes. But one of them was that they saw a Sasquatch underneath a limb. And when the Sasquatch disappeared over a ridgeline, they ran up to where he was standing under this, this prodigious limb. And there was a static electricity present that obviously, that they could feel that static electricity. Those are the kinds of things that lead to that hypothesis you were just talking about, because static electricity just doesn't exist during the daytime in the woods, surrounded by material that doesn't conduct electricity. So, but anyway, Dan, thank you for bringing that out, because we're gonna get cryptid up in this joint. Would you like to either present a topic to the group or ask somebody a question?
I'll throw a cryptid question out there.
Yes,
I feel like if you've dove into the cryptid world, you've got a favorite. Like what is your favorite cryptid? That's not just Bigfoot. You can't name Bigfoot. You can't name Loch Ness. What is your underground underdog cryptid?
I mean, I love Mothman. I got, right?
West Virginia, right?
Right. Point Pleasant. I mean, what a cool story. There's just, flying moth. I would love to be Mothman. Fly around, Sounds sweet.
It's
I like
got its
mermaids.
perks.
Right. Totally.
I don't know. I feel like, are we going like possibly real, or are we just going straight mythology? Because I love unicorns.
You can have one of each.
Okay, unicorns and mermaids. And I say the mermaids separately because people have seen some things in the water that make you go, that sounds more cryptid than mermaid.
All right, I want to throw a quick shout out based on the mermaid comment. Have you guys ever heard of Max Hawthorne?
I've not.
He has been on Spaced Out Radio, and that guy is the best podcast guest ever. Like, he has done all this research on sea creatures and has these amazing stories that he can recount for you during it. He's written several books called Coronis Rising. Phenomenal guy, man. Like, I follow him on Twitter, and his interviews are always hilarious because he has like an enormous cat that always shows up and jumps on him, and he talks to it like it's a baby on air. It cracks me up. But man, the guy has some phenomenal stories, like 900-foot long sharks.
Wow.
There's just a creature that looked like a shellless turtle that was spotted, and a picture was taken of it that was 100 feet long or something. Just ridiculous stuff that has been spotted in our oceans, which makes me think about USOs and Dave Fravor's recounting of the object that rose from underneath the torpedo, sucked it down as they were pulling the diver that was trying to recover it out of it. Like, what is going on under the surface of the ocean? Mermaids.
It's huge.
Yeah, I wrote that one down. Wes Hawthorne as a possible guest. So I'll
Max Hawthorne.
Max. Oh, sorry, Max Hawthorne. I was conflating him with Wes Germer. So Max Hawthorne. Thank you. Got that. And I'm going to break one of the rules and say Sasquatch just because I am fascinated with the idea of this creature that is potentially, and you guys can take this around the table as well, that is part us and maybe part primate and maybe I hate to say unevolved because, Dan was talking about that if the power went off, our records would be lost, that there would be a number of people that would die within a very short period of time. panic, all these sorts of things. And then if I refer to Sasquatch as unevolved, but yet this is a creature that has survived and thrived in the forest on its own for, you know, an untold period of time. I don't know how long. Dan might know. Nathan might know. Deb might know. Um, then how can I necessarily say it's unevolved? Maybe from a technological perspective, yes. Um, but yeah, I'm going to say I'm very intrigued with that creature, that it can, in many cases, live not harmoniously with humans, but be able to live on adjacent to humans and not interact with it. And so I find that fascinating. There's not a lot of creatures that fall into that category. So
I wouldn't call it unevolved. I would say it was differently adapted. It's adapted highly to its environment, and it evolved differently than we did. Just like I think 3 of the 4 of us wear corrective lenses because we live in an environment, we live in a world where looking at things close up is more important than looking at our surroundings at this point. So
interesting.
our vision has deteriorated over the last few generations because we don't need to be as aware of our entire surroundings like we used to. I think that's part of it. I feel like that's a current sign of us changing the way that our physical nature is. I'm sure it has a lot to do with the fact that our infant mortality rate is 0. Like if I had been born with my eyesight, I had to get LASIK. I had to get PRK, which is the more extreme version of LASIK. If I had been born with my eyesight back in the 1600s, I would have died. Like, no doubt about it. I wouldn't have survived. If I was born in 50 BC, I absolutely would have died. So maybe it's just that's why our eyes are deteriorating. I'm sure there's part of that. But I think that we're watching ourselves. We're evolving into Wall-E right now. Like, look at the American physique. We're changing the way that we look by the way that we eat. It's crazy.
You share this hypothesis. Nathan, Deb, do you guys remember Dr. Master said the same thing about eyesight when he was on the show with us? He did.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we asked him
missed-
about that. Yeah, and I think we often kind of confuse the fact that we've been so successful and that we spread around the globe with our kind of superiority, right? Ants are everywhere, and they do a great job surviving, and we don't interact with them all that much, and they may think that they're really kind of all that there is. So it's very possible we're in the same boat, just because we're everywhere, and we're doing a good job, quote unquote, reproducing and passing our genes down doesn't really reflect at all to what else is out there around us. And I think for me, at least, that's what the cryptids, kind of hint to, and the UFO sort of thing hints to, is that we are really in this sort of rich atmosphere of life. It's just that we can't perceive most of it. And we've sort of conflated our inability to perceive that with there's just nothing there, that it's only what we can perceive. And I think this is sort of peeking through our kind of routine perception and allowing us to realize how kind of small of a niche we actually occupy.
So it's almost like, as Lou Elizondo said, we're in the middle. Like, we're not on either extreme end of the spectrum. We're somewhere in the middle. We're not the biggest fish. We're not the smallest fish.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I feel bad that I'm drinking red wine. We have Dan on. I feel like I should be drinking Pappy Van Winkle, or that Dan has a bottle of that at his house. So I hope you don't judge me for the red wine, Dan. No,
not at all. My wife drinks Pinot Grigio, so you're closer to her taste buds than mine. I'm a whiskey guy.
Nice. What I just said, Pappy Van Winkle, man.
I don't know what that is. I didn't know.
It's a bourbon.
Oh my God, it's so hard to get. I think the bottles are going for.
I didn't say I drink good whiskey. I drink whiskey.
Yeah,
okay.
They're obscenely expensive.
Yeah,
I hate to sort of switch gears, but I wanted to ask kind of an interesting question about our history, because we are kind of talking about history here. But how much stake do you put in the and maybe I'll go to DJ first with this one. How much stake do you put into the whole Eisenhower alien, encounter? Do you think that there's some truth to that story?
Based on when you look at, Eisenhower's a 4-star general, you look at how many men he lost in World War II and what that felt like to him as one of the premier officers in the history of our nation, who then became president. He'd be very, very sensitive to that issue as compared with, not to say that all presidents have to have served or anything like that. I'm not from that perspective, but it would be particularly sensitive to him. So the idea that he would trade lives for technology is not resonant with me. I don't think that that's something he would do. However, though, Nathan, as a thought experiment, I think we could play this out a little bit, and maybe we could just free ourselves up a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, what's a couple kids jumping in a pond in Devil's Tower? I mean, it's not a big deal,
right?
So, all right. So are we at Edwards Air Force Base? Is that where this?
Yeah, that's where supposedly the meeting went down. Yeah.
Dan, Debs, people in the chat, viewers on YouTube and Twitter, we are at the end of a runway or a lonely taxiway at Edwards Air Force Base. I am representing Dwight David Eisenhower, and Nathan is the phenomenon.
So I've just landed my ship, I guess, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. So I guess you've come on board, and we're not really talking. There's sort of a telepathy going on, and I'm offering a little bit of a trade deal here. I don't know if you've ever experienced this problem. Maybe you would like this technology. It's pretty good, but if you ever gone into a room and you needed to turn the lights on, and you can't find the switch, you're just like, you don't remember, you're not sure where it is, or you got in bed and you forgot to hit the switch, and you don't want to get up again. There's technology that we could give you where if you just kind of put your hands together, it would turn the lights off. Would that be something that would be of interest to you? Would that be a good deal?
The clapper? Yes. I think for some sort of anti-gravity propulsion system, and the clapper, I find that to be otherwise I'll tell you what, I have a counter offer. We have developed something that, for example, if you were on a spacewalk and you have some sort of a spanner on your belt and you don't want to lose it, you're outside, you have your craft, and then all of a sudden one of these little pulses, wave guides in the skin needs to be repaired. You need a little bit of super glue or something, or some double bubble. And so we have something called Velcro.
Okay.
And I would be willing to trade this to you if you would, I don't know, give us some sort of a sports car looking disc.
Right. That sounds pretty intriguing. We don't have anything like that on the ship. And quite frankly, I never thought we would need something like that. But when you described it to me just now, I could see there's a lot of value to it. So, yeah, let's make a trade there. That sounds like a good idea to me.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Also, we'd be willing to trade some, maybe there's something that we've used also. Let's say, the landing gear on these ships, you're going through, coming into the atmosphere, things are starting to get rusty. We've developed something called WD-40. It's called just a little bit of squirt.
Yeah.
All your squeaks go away. Dan uses it all the time on the hinges on his kid's bedroom door.
I'm glad you brought it up because, we have some of the squeakiest equipment here on the ship. And if you're saying I can just do this,
that seat,
and the squeaks are gone, then that makes my intergalactic travel like a lot smoother. So I would absolutely be willing to make that trade.
Gotta do it. I think we have a trade here. I think what we've established is there's absolutely no question that Dwight David Eisenhower did, in fact, make some sort of a trade, barter some sort of a deal with the phenomenon, Nathan. I think we've solved this.
Yeah, with deals like those, how could it not have happened, right?
Can I get an amen? Look at that. This is how we can get along with other intelligences.
That's it.
Amen, brothers and sisters.
Trade. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a so that little crazy bit aside, which we had a fun time imagining.
Yeah.
Dan, do you think there is anything that like is worthy of exchange, with our culture and kind of whatever these other cultures may be? I mean, what kind of thing would we be able to bring to the table to that? Do you think?
DNA. Earth is a mecca for a variety of life. To me, that is the value that we bring to the table. I think there's asteroids on the planet or in the universe that have a lot more gold than we have on our entire planet. But we have a variety that is possibly unsurpassed in the universe. I'm obviously I am speaking with a lot of assumption there, but I think that's what it would be. Is we are just a seed bank of different types of species and variety, and it changes constantly. It's always different. Like you come back 100,000 years from now, we'll have the different animals than we do now. So it's going to be DNA, in my opinion. I think that's what we have, and that's what there's reproductive overtones in the abduction phenomena that also kind of back that up.
So we're this garden, basically, right? We're this, really rich cornucopia of life that, like you said, may just not be that abundant elsewhere. I love that idea.
Nathan, that look on your face right now, that look of joy, that look of intrigue that you have, it's not easy. That in itself is a miracle to another intelligence. I'm supposing, of course, but I assume that is a miracle. Is that look of joy, that feeling, that emotion, and if I were to think of what they might want to look at us for, is they may desire to have that or see if they can breed that into their species.
Well, I've often thought about the Greys as more or less minions. Like if you look at the Minion movies,
Yep.
Some of them have bad genetics. I mean, some of them are pretty sharp, but a lot of them, they're so inbred or I don't know how they reproduce minions, but they're just not conscious. They're not deep thinking. Maybe they were so hybridized that they lost the spontaneousness of the human experience. Like we're very unpredictable creatures, just in general. We like to have fun. We like to pick on each other. Maybe that's one of the things that happens is they have to inject some human DNA just to make them more pleasant to be around. Because let's face it, Greys seem really boring.
Right.
Dinner
Exactly.
conversation. They're looking at the four fingers.
Comedy show. Yeah.
They can't open a Budweiser bottle that has the, even if it's a twist off, it's
right. It's tough to play the banjo. Deb, what do you think?
Yeah.
I had a thought about, I definitely think the DNA is of interest because we have so many experiencers saying that's being taken, essentially. But I thought of the one thing that we might be willing to trade for, and I don't think it's going to be Velcro. I think
What?
it is. I think it's going to be defense. If we get told that they're going to defend us from asteroids or other visitors, I bet you that would be immediately an agreement.
That
I
makes
thought
a
you were
lot
going
of
to say
sense.
spackle, like what you would repair the holes in the wall. I thought spackle is what she was going to say, so I'm
Well,
surprised. She
there's
said
an
defense.
individual, Patrick Jackson, who has talked about there's a defense system. That's what he thinks the orbs are. And it's really an interesting concept to me that we have possibly visitors working to protect us. So that's the only thing I could think of that would be worth it to trade for.
So you just kind of hit on one of the topics in Chains of the Sea. There's a entity that lives on Earth with us that we can't perceive. The extraterrestrials come to Earth at the same time. The humans see it and they go and they try to figure it out and they end up trying to attack it. But the extraterrestrials are not here for us. They're here to interact with these other beings that they've had a relationship with for eons. So it could be that we're protected as a byproduct of another unseen intelligence that's on Earth that we get the benefit of protection. Just like if moray, what are the little sucker fish that swim around on the giant sharks, whatever those things are, they're living the dream. Maybe that's what we are. There's a big shark that we don't even realize that we're living on, but we benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they're communicating with sea life?
According to Star Trek, they absolutely are.
No,
Love
according
that.
to Dan Warren. I'm not interested in Bill Shatner here. I'm sorry, Bill. I don't mean that. Doesn't mean we don't want to have you on the show. But go ahead.
Oh man, I don't know if they're talking to anything in the oceans.
And
I think they're probably talking to each other in the oceans. That's probably where the conversation is. I think that they probably spend more time under the sea where we can't see them and they're protected from us than they do in our skies where we have at least a chance of seeing them.
That totally makes sense. And I just want to throw this out there in case you didn't. And I'm just for Dan. I don't know if you saw the episode where Dave Mason and Dave Altman from A Terror in the Sky were on, and Dave Mason said what they did is they were able to get recordings of native whale sounds, and they were able to synthesize that with light patterns, so that when they viewed the phenomenon, they would project these light patterns, which ostensibly were the sounds of whales, at the phenomenon to say, look, we're trying to communicate with you, but we're doing so in a way that's using a species that's not as developed as us and shows our humanity and our love of other beings that we share the planet with, or other species, I should say.
That's thinking outside of the box for sure.
It was.
I wouldn't have come up with that.
I was blown away when he told. These guys can tell you when he said that. I was just like, oh my god! I was verklempt. I was like Linda Richman. So,
Yeah. No, it's pretty
Who
cool.
the hell's that, man?
Well, we want to take some audience questions. Then we have a few in the chat. Deb, I starred 3. I know we talked a little bit about this sort of reevaluation of our past, our ancient past. Kind of, we covered that one a little bit, but I like this question, Dan. So, do you believe the UFO phenomenon has something to do with death?
I don't know. I'm struggling to answer that one.
Or how do you? Maybe we can rephrase that. I mean, I don't know to what degree you're familiar with the, the near-death experience accounts or the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, and kind of what we're trying to glean from those experiences. How much have you looked into, out of body, near death, past life, all that kind of stuff?
To a small extent. I haven't dove into that like other topics, but I think what the overarching thing that I heard you bring up was consciousness. I do think there's a consciousness connection. What exactly it is, and if it ends at the point of the body's death, if we are just vessels, like Tom DeLonge says, if we're receivers of consciousness instead of transmitters, that to me is something that's very intriguing and could possibly be why the UFO, how we interact with the UFO phenomena. Maybe it's on a conscious level, because when I think Lou Elizondo said it, Tom DeLonge has said it, a UFO is the representation of the nexus between quantum physics and consciousness. So death is part of consciousness. So I guess it does in that perspective. But I don't know, man. If consciousness ceases at the time of death, then I wouldn't think they'd be too interested in us after the fact. Right. But why are there ghosts?
Yeah.
I have so many questions right here that we're not going to get to tonight, but I want to take this one around the panel. I want to start with you, Dan, and then go to Debs, and then go to Nathan, please. But if you were to go and arrive in Chris Bledsoe's property today, and he basically said to you, Dan, ask me anything.
I would probably say, do you mind if I move in? And
no, you can't do it. That's a perfect cab response right there. But go ahead.
I would have to grill him about the lady, like without any doubt. I'd want to know more about that. The fact that he says she said she was Hathor. Like, you got to elaborate on that. Like, what else did she tell you? That to me is amazing. Like I've said before, hearing him say that makes the 2020 timeframe that we're living in now and the Egyptian pyramid era crash together in a beautiful way. Like if there is some way for me to link back to that era, which is my hands down favorite era in human civilization, it's what I first became obsessed with. First, I became obsessed with looking and memorizing all the fish in the encyclopedia that we had at my house. But then I started getting into the Egyptian civilization that lived to such a large level back then. And for that to be something that could be present in today in modern times, that would blow my mind. That would be awesome. That's what I would want to ask them about, is tell me if they told you anything about Egypt. How did they build those pyramids? Is there a void?
Yes. I love it. That is a great question. And you know what? When I meet up with Dan this time, when he comes to Destin or Miramar, I'm going to talk less, keep my mouth shut more, and listen more and keep my mouth shut more. So, because you're fascinating. Deb, if you were to arrive on the Bledsoe property, which is certainly not out of the question yet, what would you ask him?
I would like to talk to him more about the healing. He has conveyed that he's gotten the gift of healing to from the phenomenon. So I would like to know more about that.
Love it.
Yeah, that was actually going to be mine too. The healing. I mean, that's really fascinating to me. And I guess if I had to go with a second one, it would be, he seemingly has, some ability to remote view, or he has some kind of psi ability. So would love to hear more about like what he can do there.
Yeah, I've heard some not good premonitions that he's had. Maybe I don't want to hear about. Maybe ignorance is bliss on some of that stuff.
Right.
That's another question that I'm going to want to ask the panel if we end up having enough time. Is about the worst possible scenarios of interaction with the phenomenon. But for me, I think I would want to ask him the time that he was in the craft and actually went for a ride. What did they communicate to him? What entered his mind that they either projected into his mind or made him feel like? I would want to just get into that experience about it. Was it tactile, visceral, all these sorts of things? So that's what I would want to ask him. Deb, do you have something that you'd like to present to the group?
What do you mean by present? Do you mean like
A topic that you would like
Yes.
to
Like
resolve?
a PowerPoint, maybe? Do you have one?
Yeah, no, I was confused. I'm like, I'm not ready to present. No, actually,
I could have Nathan go if you want.
I know, no. Actually, what I was going to do was tie in one question that our friend David had brought up that we sort of answered, but I'm going to change it a little bit. His question was, "Will the
Which
paradigm?"
David?
It's
Lanier?
David Smithhurst.
Oh, Dave Smethurst. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So he had said, "Will the paradigm shift UAP disclosure brings?" Okay, I think I needed a comma there. Will the paradigm shift UAP disclosure lead to a reevaluation of our ancient past? So we kind of covered that, right? So what I thought I'd ask, and we can just kind of throw this out to everyone, is what paradigm shift do you guys foresee in the near future when this does become more evident, more disclosed? Do you think? I just have to say is I don't think society is going to fall apart. I think they have a 2-week attention span and they're going to move on. What do you think?
Do you want to take that first, Nathan?
No, I'm going to give Dan that one first. Give it to the guest.
I think there's going to be a palpable anger that brews from a very broad base in the United States in particular, that is going to not be a good outcome for the military industrial complex, which is justification in my mind for them wanting to keep it as a closely guarded secret. I think the lack of trust that we're going to be able to put in our, I'll say it this way. The lack of trust that we're going to be able to put in our past leaders is going to be replaced by trust that we're going to have in the leaders that are pushing this effort now to get disclosure, to get the truth out to the populace. I think that's going to be a major shift. I think it's going to be less about red fighting blue, and more about who was telling the truth and who was in the dark, or who was actively engaging in a cover up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be incredibly disruptive. And not maybe in some obvious ways, maybe some non-obvious ways, but I think there's going to be a real period of kind of soul searching and reckoning that we're going to have to do with the story, in part because I don't know that we're going to get all the answers. It's really going to, in my opinion at least, set the table. It's going to give permission for people to take this seriously, and then that validates a lot of experience that people have had with a whole sort of multiplicity of phenomena. And then how do we rank, prioritize that, or kind of get some sort of larger learning at it? So some new disciplines will emerge, some new religious practices will emerge, undoubtedly. I've mentioned this to DJ plenty of times, but and on the show as well. I mean, my hope, my optimism is that if it requires a societal shift in understanding, if it requires just enough of our human civilization to be ready to accept this reality, that's a point at which whatever this is, or at least one of the groups that are in a part of this, will emerge from that kind of obscured place and take a more active engagement with us as a civilization. I'm not sure we can navigate this just on our own. In other words, I really think we need some assistance from another being or beings who have kind of been down this path before, and maybe are ready to assist us in navigating this kind of uncertain future. I'm not sure we can handle it just with the tools that we have, and with them. Then I use that in kind of the broadest sense, being in the sort of in the shadows in the way that they are now.
We only have 2 minutes left. I think Deb is asking, do you think that that's going to happen, Nathan? I think that's what she's asking. Is will that be
not to the full degree? Yeah. Okay. So I think we're going to see these kind of continued slow admissions, and there will be these kind of voids that are created that will be filled with more speculation. I don't think we're going to get the full answers, and I think it's going to take quite a long time for us to get those answers, unless we have that more active engagement from one of these parties.
We only have about a minute left. We'll just go just a couple of minutes over just to get this last answer out, and then we'll start saying our goodbyes, and we'll start begging Dan to come back on again. We'll begin the begging and writing checks, but in my mind, I'm kind of like thinking about a belt sander. And if I have a hand belt sander, and depending upon what grit I use and how much pressure I apply to that piece of wood, I can really make a big impact on that piece of wood. But if I really want a fine piece of wood where when it's done, I can dress it, with a good stain and perhaps a good protective coating like a urethane, I might take a finer grain of sandpaper on that hand belt sander and just press it down gently and let it start to remove the material that's there that's blocking the true beauty of the wood. And I think that's the approach that will happen. I think some of that will happen because the phenomenon has presented itself, and because of the fact that there are now reporting procedures. And we saw one pilot the other night talk about it. We saw 2 pilots the other night say, you know what? We're not going to say it on Talk to LA Center radar control and tell them about it, but we're going to call that pilot afterwards, which takes a significant amount of effort for them to get for them to figure out that guy's call sign, find out what company he's with, call that company, get his cell phone number, and call that guy. And they did that. So 1 out of 3 right now reported it just the other night. So we're in a really good spot right now. And we're talking about subject matter experts that are seeing something to 10,000 feet above flight level 470 or 47,000 feet. That said that is flashing in a way that looks anomalous, not like the Navy ship Snoopy team video to me that I can't glean anything from looking at that. But when they talk about an aircraft at that altitude going into a bank and taking half the state of Ohio to make one revolution, then but yet these things are seeing them doing tight circles coming right over the windscreen and circling above that craft. Now I know that the phenomenon is showing what it can do, showing its wares, saying, look at me, look at this, just like it did to those Tucson helicopters kind of thing. So, yeah, I think the phenomenon is going to play a role in this, but I think from the human perspective, we need to put that belt sander down with a fine grit sandpaper, right, Dan? And then just put a gentle amount of pressure and then just let it start to remove that old, dead material that is covering up the beauty of that wood, and eventually we'll get there.
220 grit at least.
There you go.
400 if you really want it to be smooth.
So we got to, this went by so fast, Dan. We're like, we're going to take an hour and a half today. Well, we took an hour and a half, and I still have a whole bunch of questions. We were going to get into exorcism and Catholicism. We were going to get into Coral Castle with you. So, yeah.
Edward Lee Scalding. I haven't ever been down there. Have you been down there?
I've not been there, and I'm so sad because I did go to Homestead within days of me retiring from the Air Force. I drove there, spent a week there, and then departed to move to Brazil from there. But I want to go. So let's make this pitch now. Dan, will you come back on with us? We'll have like another fireside chat, have another guest, and we'll just drag you right into that.
Yeah, I'm game. Count me in. I'll bring a log.
It's an honor, man, to have you on. It really is. You're such amazing conversation. As much I can't think of anybody we've had on this better conversation in the 2 or 3 times that you've been on with us, including before I even had Nathan and had Calling All Beings. You came on with me, and and made conversation. I really appreciate that. So with that, let me pass it over to Debs.
I just wanted to commend you for all your work. You do such deep research and you find a way to make it like really palpable for people in such a short period of time. And then the fact that you share it with us on other forums is much appreciated because some of us are too old for TikTok. But thank you so much. I'm very grateful for what you do.
It's fun to do it. Like, I'm a goal-oriented person, so for me to dig into the research and then have a goal in mind, a product at the end of it, it's a reward for myself. It's what helps keep me going, and I'm just shocked and amazed that other people enjoy it as well. And I couldn't be happier about it. It's great to have people appreciate the work that you put into something like this. And I'm glad some people get value out of it. So I appreciate you appreciating it.
Yeah, absolutely echo that. Dan, you're the real deal. You've always been incredibly gracious and kind to, at least in my interactions with you. And I think, you treat
There's
your
always
audience.
tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow. We could definitely change it if we want, given what's going on. But huge props to your work ethic on this and your eye for things. The way that you break things down and communicate these topics in a really easy to digest manner. I mean, that is not easy to do. You make it look easy, and just I can't thank you enough for doing that. And I'm really happy to count you as a colleague in this space of conversation, and looking forward to future conversations that we're going to have together.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and we'll definitely do this again in the future. And I'll be hanging out with DJ at a beach in Florida here soon. So you'll see a picture of us on Twitter, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm so honored and so blessed, and I can't wait to see you. I'm headed to the UK next week, where I'm going to see the aforementioned David Smethers and Vinny Disclosure Team and Dan, Davey Johnston, Graham, Marky O'Boyle is going to be there, Maxie McCabe. So there's going to be a slew of our friends that are going to get together, and I just wish I could bring all of you with me.
That's one of the biggest benefits to being on UFO Twitter is you have relationships around the globe. Like
Yes.
I have them in Australia, I have them in Europe. It's crazy that we have this ability to network amongst each other on a common topic like this, which is one of my hopes for the UFO phenomenon is it will bring people together. I think it'll be that way for a while, and then we'll fight amongst each other just like we always do. But I'm hoping that it'll help us have a moment of reflection.
Amen.
Come together on that. I also want to thank Jules of the Wood. Dan mentioned her. We've all mentioned her. Jules of the Wood. There's no E in there, probably because she ran out of characters. But she's a wonderful, beautiful person. We're very thankful that she's decided to help us out with the chat because we certainly needed it. And Dan, I'll be getting with you in short order so that when we do another one of these, we can just add you in there because you're just so damn good. It's ridiculous. So for Dan, for Debs, for Money Nathan, this is DJ and Cab. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Thank you for all the love that you've given us and made this so much fun for us to do this. I thank all of you, #UFO Twitter. So peace out, one love. We'll see you down the road. And just like Dan, we're always wondering what's up around the bend.
Peace.
See you guys.